This is an interesting thought experiment, but I think as a thought experiment, it's the thing that's asymmetrical, and I'll get to the actual asymmetry you bring up about this stuff. But the asymmetry is a willful asymmetry in the perceptions. I mean, if I'm fine with considering non-existent people. There is an issue there. But if you're going to use their non-existence as the reason not to count the potential positives that they would experience, then the potential negatives that they experience also can't be, you know, taken into account. So that's an unfair thing. You can't say, well, we're not going to take into the positive but the negative. Of course, you could just feel intuitively it should be taken into account. I think the bigger issue, the material inequality here is that you can choose to end your existence while you exist, but you can't choose to begin your existence while you don't exist. But I don't think that this goes exactly the way you've been thinking, because if somebody, let's say you have the choice of winning the lottery or not. A lot of people will tell you, hey, you don't want to win the lottery. All that money will just cause nothing but trouble. But isn't it better to have the choice? Isn't it better to have the choice? You could say no, and so you haven't lost the ability to say no, and you have gained the ability to do something else that you might choose to do. But I don't really want to justify life on the maybe you'll win the lottery kind of logic. I think that's pretty lame. The real issue for me is that I don't take the miseries of life quite the same as someone else. There are certainly intense enough miseries that I would consider and choose suicide. At least hypothetically, I can imagine those situations. But most of life's miseries that I encounter are things that I grow stronger from by learning from them. So they become assets, my experience, that help me to enjoy life, because I've learned from the miseries. I've learned how not to cause them, how to avoid them, how to deal with what does come. And in the end, sometimes there's things like this where, we have to check our maturity. When I was young, I'd complain about having to go get firewood. By the time I was an adolescent, those were some of my fondest memories, is going out hunting for firewood for the campfire. So we can reevaluate and reestablish what we believe about the hardships we've gone through. We have feelings at the time, we have feelings later on. We continue to experience these pains and pleasures as we go through life, and we have an ability to make the choices about what we relate to what. And this is the beneficial thing. In terms of bringing somebody into this world, I like the dropping Krugerrand's idea. I think that's actually a very useful image for various philosophical things, probably. But as you pointed out, you can choose to leave this world. So if somebody's brought into this world, they haven't lost the chance of non-existence. And you say, oh, but once they're in this world, they have this vested, this investment of staying with it. Well, if that's true, then the non-existent people do have a benefit. Why? Because as soon as you give them life, they'll want to live. And if you really know that, if you really know that giving something life makes it want to live, then yeah, that's a net positive. That's an anticipated potential positive that you have to take into account. The fact is, though, we're really dealing with, we don't know if people are going to want to live. And the final thing is that I wouldn't throw in your face, oh, you should commit suicide, but this issue does come up. You're talking about being tortured, about to be being tortured, and having a chance to commit suicide by taking a poison pill. But you're in that situation right now, right? It's an analogy to say that that's basically the situation we're in right now, that life is going to torture you in the future. Well, why does it have to be quite so immediate as it is in your example for you to take the poison pill? I mean, if life is that way already, and it was basically you're drawing an equivalency that the suffering you're going to have to endure in reality is akin to this terrible suffering you don't want to endure. In reality, there's some situations in which you would rather not exist, and there's some situations in which you'll be happy that you do exist. So, yeah, I don't think it is interesting stuff. We could probably delve into it deeper. I'm sure that you will think I've missed some of the strengths or the parts of the argument, and that's fair. Maybe I have. But that's my take. I'm not super impressed with this line of reasoning because it's biased towards thinking that a negative is somehow solid and a positive, is not. In reality, they share the same amount of importance. If someone's suffering is important, then their pleasure is important. You can't say that, like I get this kid with cancer example used all the time. It's fine to point to the kid with cancer and the suffering that he and his family is going through, but when the kid recovers, which sometimes happen, you can't then discount the pleasure, the relief of that suffering. You can't discount that. That's not balanced. You have to count both or not count both. All right. Cheers.